Welcome to Roland's Travels. Today, as you can see from the title, we're taking a look at the beautiful village of Mells in Somerset. This village has a huge amount of history, going back many centuries, in fact thousands of years. We're starting our tour opposite the post office and cafe, and look at these novelty bicycle racks. The village is close to Collier's Way, a cycle route that runs from Radstock through to Frome, and so cyclists tend to come down, have a look at the village and stop off for a drink. Let's just walk down this lane first of all where those cycle racks are and just tell you a little bit about the early history of the village. Going way back in time, Mesolithic flint workshops were found to the north of the village, and then thousands of years later the Neolithic people were here around 2000 BCE, where they had fortresses guarding the entrances to its valleys. The Romans had several villas too, and the remains of a Roman village have been found along the stream from Branch Farm. More recently, the Saxons had a village here too, so a long history has developed in the population of this area. Old documents call the village Mells, and the French root word mills or mills is where that comes from. And that's appropriate because up to 30 mills were alongside the stream, which were required for the medieval wool industry. The stream obviously powered a great deal of work, and the mills were very much evident over the years, and eventually an ironworks came along as well. From 1342 the village had a weekly Monday sheep market. Interestingly, in 1348 to 1349 the Black Death was sweeping the country, and 43 out of 70 tenant householders died. But fortunately the village recovered. It had so many natural resources with the water, the ability to have quarries nearby for stone, etc. really did help the village to prosper. The Horner family became the owners of Mells. Following the dissolution of the monasteries, the Horners managed to grab themselves plenty of land, buying it from Henry VIII, and Mells was one of those villages. Nunney is another close by village that they also owned as well. It's given rise to the idea that the nursery rhyme Little Jack Horner has something to do with the Horners here at Mells, and perhaps Mells capitalises on that a little bit, but when you look into it, it seems that's not the case, so be wary. It's one of those things of folklore that might make us think that yes, Little Jack Horner has something to do with Mells, when it doesn't. There you go, just a little story for you. We're going to take a little walk at the moment down a little footpath in this footpath here to have a look at the bridge. This is a bridge over the Mells River. It was opened to celebrate the Queen's Diamond Jubilee. The bridge was designed by a Mells resident, John Mann, and it opened in 2012, which was of course the Queen's Diamond Jubilee, at a cost of £18,000. So let's work our way back now to the main village centre here. So we have the shop and post office on the left and the cafe on the right hand side, and an interesting little shelter there. We'll come back to that at the end of our video. So we're turning left from the shop, and the first building on our left we see is this one. This is from the 1690s, when Thomas Blackburn had a dyeing house here. This is what is called the Old Workhouse, which is just to the west of the post office. Now you can hear the siren going off in the background. What's that about? We are very close to Whatley Quarry, so what you hear is a siren kicking in, ready no doubt for some blasting to take place. So here's a picture from the air, and just see how close the quarry is to the village of Mells, literally within a few hundred yards in some parts. So let's carry on our walk along Selwood. This is called Selwood Street, and then we'll take a look at some interesting things that we can find along here, passing through some beautiful hedgerows and garden hedging here, with the flowers growing outside along the walls and things. It's absolutely lovely, very picturesque as you walk through the village of Mells. So first thing we come into is the War Memorial. That's the turning to Buckle and Dinham. Now the War Memorial is interesting. It's a Lutyens designed War Memorial. On our left is the village hall, which is actually an old tithe barn, 14th or 15th century, and apparently can seat 100 people when it's used for various occasions. And then next we have the walled garden, an area you can have a look around. Couldn't today, but during the season of spring to autumn it's open for teas and coffees as well as sells plants, so do check the opening times for the walled garden. Coming up on our right is something quite fascinating. It's called New Street. It started around 1470 when John Selwood, the Abbot of Glastonbury, undertook to lay out a planned settlement in the form of a cross. It was never completed, but this street was. Now what we see today has had some alterations. Many 19th century alterations took place, and some of the cottages were substantially rebuilt in the mid-19th century. Obviously it's very old, so things can happen over that period of time. Let's have a closer look as we walk down towards the church. It's nice to see all of these occupied. It's very much a living village rather than an overly tourist one, which is nice. Now coming up there on our right we see the former boys' school. That was opened and converted in 1840 by Colonel Horner. Originally there were 4 schools over a period of time. There's a boys' school in New Street in 1840. We'll get to Rectory Corner in a while and see one, or the area where one was opened in 1680. There is still a present school in an area called the Green that was opened in 1813. And there used to be a Prospect Cottage in 1840 that specialised in mental arithmetic. So we're approaching the church gates now. The church is St Andrew's Church. Started in the year 1292. Most of the building now is later than that. It's late 15th century, which includes the West Tower. Just to look back down the New Street there. Nice view of it. And there's the tower. Now the tower as a faceless clock, first mentioned in 1685, and there's I presume that's a well that's been capped in the churchyard. Lots of graves around. Now at the back of the church, I went to have a look at this wall. It actually turns out that's the rear wall to the manor house, so we'll see the manor house in a little while, but you can walk around the footpath to come out further down along near Rectory Corner. Let's go back amongst the trees. I think these are yew trees all the way back down to the church, and then we can take a look at the view of the manor house from here, getting a glimpse of it just around the corner there. It was John Horner who in 1543 purchased the manor. The Horner family lived in Mells until around 1725, when they built a new mansion in Mells Park, where they stayed until 1902 as a family, and then returned to Mells Manor. We'll take a look at the gate piers later. They're the work of Edwin Lutyens. There's no public access to the manor, so you have to have a little glimpse of it from the road and over walls and things like that. And right on cue, there are the chimes of the faceless clock. So now we're back onto Selwood Street, where we can take a look at the Talbot Inn. A very old inn this one is, established in 1480. In modern day times, in 2013, it was the Sunday Times Hotel of the Year, and some beautiful cottages that lie opposite. As we just walk along the street a little bit, we'll get another glimpse in a moment of the manor. We'll tell you a little bit more about it when we get there. Here's an oddity for you to look at. The Gentleman's Magazine in 1794 wrote the following: "Half the old house is mouldering in ruins, the rest is occupied by a farmer." But Mells Manor was restored by the Horners in the early 20th century, and although it's now substantially still an Elizabethan house, it may incorporate still earlier work. So these are the gate pillars designed by Sir Edwin Lutyens, with the Talbot dogs on the top. So we're looking back at the gates there. So this is Rectory Corner, a little bus stop hidden in the trees, which is designed by Edward Lutyens as well. So we're going to walk up Gay Street now and take a look at some of the lovely old cottages that we can find along here, and do enjoy the views as we go. Well, now we've found an old lockup. This is a 17th century lockup for the village, for the miscreants who got drunk or whatever, would be locked up in there overnight until they could be taken to see the judiciary the next day. It's another beautiful old thatch cottage. We're almost in a circular walk from when we started out earlier on where the footbridge was. If we carry on this way it would have done that, but let's go back to the village centre again, where we're at the post office and the village stores, the cafe, and I'd sort of tell you a little bit more about the shelter just coming up opposite the village stores. This was designed by Edwin Lutyens, again another work of his. It was commissioned by Lady Horner as a memorial to her son Mark, who died in 1908. Lady Horner had water from the manor supply piped to various points around the village in memory of her son, and the interior of this shelter bears the inscription, "For the use of Mells Village in memory of Mark Horner, 1908."